What's up, everybody? This is Jer Barron coming at you with a long put-off video about dino stats in ARK. This is something I've been meaning to cover basically since breeding came out, but especially since mutations. If you're looking for a guide to mutations, I'm not going to cover that in this video. If people are interested in a second video covering that, leave a comment below and let me know, and I'll make it happen. I might just do it anyway. This video is going to play out in 4 parts. First, I'm going to go over the relationship between dino levels and stats at a basic level. Second, I'll explain what happens to stats when you tame something, and then even after that when you're leveling and all that. Third, I will explain how stat distribution works when breeding and some general strategies for breeding. And fourth, I want to go into a critique I have personally about the taming stat system and make a suggestion to the devs. I don't know what that'll do, but I just feel, it's been on my mind, So first, how do dino levels affect stats? At a basic level, the first thing you need to understand is that every wild dino has a set of base statistics. Okay? That means that every single level 1 Rex will have literally the same stats. And if I go into here, you can see 11, 420, 153, right? All the way down. 11, 420, 150, 3000, etc. Every single level 1 Rex will have the exact same stats. For each higher level in the wild, that dino receives a random boost of a particular stat, with 2 exceptions, which I'll go over in a moment. So a level 10 dino has 9 level ups, and they get randomly allocated to one of its stats. So while Dino A could get like 2 points in health and 1 point in stamina and 3 points in oxygen and 3 points in melee, some other like random level 10 Dino 2 could have all 9 points in health, although that's extremely unlikely and gets more and more unlikely the higher the level. So all the other stats that it doesn't get level ups into would remain at the base level. So if it got 9 levels and didn't happen to get any of them in stamina, it would stay at 420. Okay. As well, each dino's level ups increase by different amounts by species. Dododex, which you should definitely download if you haven't already, will give you this information by species, and it has a really wonderful visual representation of any stat combination. There are 2 exceptions to this. Dinos cannot receive a level up in torpor. Okay, that value is set no matter what at a certain, and this one's tamed, right? But on a wild Rex that you down that's unconscious, the torpor will be exactly the same if it's the same species and the same level dino across the board. So every level 28 Rex or every level 34 Raptor will have the same base wild torpor stat. The second exception is that every wild dino has the same movement speed, and it's only on tame that sometimes you get a boost to movement speed. So I'm not really sure why the devs did that, but that's how it is. So theoretically, but the difference between that and torpor is that when a dino levels up in the wild, it can actually put a point into movement speed, but then the stat doesn't change, and so it's a wasted point. Okay, and Dododex will show you your wasted points as well. But what that theoretically means is that you could have a level 88 dino, and again, this is nearly, if not, I mean, it's not statistically impossible, but it's basically impossible that, let's say, a level 88 Rex ends up with all 87 extra levels in movement speed. It'll have the same stats as this level 1 Rex, the exact same stats. Now, the chances of that happening are unbelievably small, but it's technically possible. Dododex will also tell you how many points were wasted in movement speed. So how would you put this into practice? Okay, I've downed 2 wild packies, 1 male, 1 female. Both are level 100. Okay? This one down here, these are the stats. I'm going to enter these stats into Dododex. Again, download Dododex if you haven't. You can do it in your browser or on a mobile as an app. Okay, so I'm going to plug the stats into Dododex, and it'll show you visually and with some sort of bars, with numbers, what the stat distribution is. So this first one, health 770, stamina 315, oxygen 435, food 2760, weight 207, and melee damage 145. Movement speed is always the same, torpor is always the same. Okay, as you can see here, This one is a little bit skewed towards health, weight, and oxygen. The other ones are stamina and melee damage are below average, food is kind of average, and then at the very bottom there you see wasted points 11 in movement speed. So those are 11 points that didn't actually go to any stats. The second one here has very rounded stats, as you can see visually. It's got a little bit more points into stamina than the other categories. It's got terrible, horrible melee, but look at how many points it's wasted in movement speed. So this is a high-level packy that just, it's not even worth taming if you're looking for something high level, and certainly it's not at all worth taming if you were looking to breed. Even this one here is not that great, but at least it's got, you know, 3 stats that have fairly decent values. So what are you looking for? Like if you're thinking about breeding, what are you looking for? You want one stat that is particularly high. You want a stat that like you down it and you put it into Dodo Decks, and one of those 6 little pieces of the spider web is just sort of off the charts, and the rest of them might be total crap, but that's okay. And I'll explain why when we get to the breeding section. So, hypothetically, you trank a wild dino and you find out it has pretty good stats. Now what do? Obviously, you're going to want to try to tame it with the best taming effectiveness possible. If there are 2 ways the taming effectiveness essentially gets wrecked or ruined. One of them is if it takes any damage after it's already down or even as it's falling to the ground. And the second way, it depends on the food you use. So having a high taming effectiveness has 2 distinct benefits. First, it gives you the most bonus levels. So something with a higher taming effectiveness, you'll get more bonus levels on tame out of it. The lower the taming effectiveness, the less bonus levels you'll receive when it wakes up tamed. Now, what we've learned so far is that levels in ARK are not arbitrary, so they're related to the stat values. So once again, you hope that the random allocation of those bonus levels goes where you want it to, whether it's health, stamina, weight, whatever the thing you're looking for is. You hope it goes to there. Usually this involves not going to food or oxygen. Once again, any levels that go into speed are wasted. Absolutely wasted. Sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you don't. You can skip ahead in the video, or you keep watching if you want my critique of this mechanic. But for now, I'm gonna leave that critique to the side. The second advantage to higher taming effectiveness is that it has a direct effect on a dino's melee. So you get an initial melee roll, 145 there, and 155 here. I won't go directly into the formula here. You can look that up. It's pretty mathy. But to put it short, better taming effectiveness means better melee. That's why it's beneficial to use kibble even on a server with high multipliers, because kibble decreases the effectiveness the least of any tame food. So even if you're on a server that's like nearly instant tame, or it's like where dinos will only have to take a couple bites before they get up, using kibble is the best for taming efficiency, and you'll get even if it's a slight boost, you'll get a little bit of boost of melee from using kibble instead of prime or instead of vegetables or whatever. So after the dino is your friend, the stats scale differently. So except for movement speed, which is the same for every single dino of any level within a species, and again this applies to taming and not breeding, stats increase based on a percentage of the base tame value of each stat. Okay? That means the number when they wake up tamed. So these are both level 180. Whoops. This one has a set of stats, right? This one has a different set of stats. Even though they're both the same level, obviously they both have different stats. So you can see, just to take health as an example, this one has 6,160 to start. This one has 7,040 to start. This one will get less health per level up than that one, because that one started with a higher on tame base stat, and that applies to every single stat except, of course, for movement speed, which does not get affected. It gets affected the same no matter what the level. And that's why you need to understand that stats scale after tame as a percentage of the base, not as a flat value. So these guys are not equal when it comes to leveling that up. It's also why you want to write down, if you have a good breeder dino, you want to write down those stats before you put any of these levels into it, so that you know what the base is. Okay. This is a double-edged sword, because let's say we get a Rex that has like a ridiculously high health value, like some crazy, like 10,000 on tame, right? Right on tame without any levels, 10,000. It's probably got total crap stats in every other respect, but it gets the most per level up out of that stat. So you can end up potentially having like an unkillable Rex, you know? But you might have to like pump a bunch of extra levels into stamina, whereas in other dinos you wouldn't have to put as many levels in. Breeding fixes some of that, but if you're taming a dino for utility only, that's the double-edged sword of a dino that has a really skewed stat. It's the benefit and the drawback. So finding a balance that works for each dino based on what you plan to use that dino for that's kind of part of the fun of ARK. Okay. But let's say you do plan to breed your dinos. How does that work, and what is the best strategy? Setting aside mutations for the moment, there are two basic things you need to know about how babies get their stats. First, for each category, they receive either their mother's or their father's stat. So, here I have them paired, F1, M1, right? 4 sets of male and females. And let's say these are the hypothetical parents of 4 different babies. This one has 5220 health. This one has 7480, considerably higher. The baby is going to inherit one of those 2 stats. There is a 70% chance that it will inherit the better stat for each category. So theoretically, you could breed one with only the best stats from each of those on your first go. This is pretty rare, though. It's a 12% chance of happening that you'll get all 6 of them the best one. So your baby has the highest chance of inheriting either 4 or 5 of the best stats, and it actually has the lowest chance of of not inheriting any of the best stats. So the system is skewed towards making your dinos better. Second thing to note, for melee damage specifically, this is 278.7. This one's 325.8. Let's say that the baby rolls this 325.8 and you get the benefit of it. It's actually going to have a little bit higher melee, because when you breed a dino, the game pretends that you tamed it at 100% taming efficiency. And so if you remember what I was talking about a moment ago, what that means is you get just, even if it's ever so slightly, a boost in the melee damage, because it's calculated in part based on the taming effectiveness. So that only happens for the first generation, though. Any generations after that will not receive a similar bonus. ARK also introduced imprinting a while back. Basically, the system rewards players who give their babies extra care by boosting the baby's stats. A dino that receives 100% imprinting bonus will have all stats increased by 20%. I just raised these, so you won't see it represented, but here's where you would see how much it's imprinted. It also says this when you're breeding. So if it gets 100% imprinting bonus, it will have all its stats increased by 20%. All of them. Except food and oxygen, but including movement speed and torpor. So that's a little bit different. The baby also remembers who raised it. So raised by Jer Baron, right? So if you're in a tribe, you want to make sure that you whoever's dino it's going to be, you want them to be doing the raising, because the baby remembers who raised it and gives a mama or papa bonus to that rider. The bonus is related to this, and if it's 100%, you get a 30% increase in damage, and you take 30% less damage. The dino does, of course, not you. Those are pretty huge buffs. Let's say, though, that you don't have a million years to spend online, and everybody's got a life, and so you can only imprint it to 60%. Well, you still get 60% of those values, and so the stats, if you imprint it at 60%, would be increased by 12%, and your rider bonuses would be increased by 18%. instead of 20 and 30. So what's the best strategy then? How does one make a super dino? In general, the most effective way to breed a super dino is to find a dino with a ridiculously, improbably high stat roll in a single category for all 6 categories. Okay? So, one dino with an absurdly high base health, let's say. Another dino with an absurdly high stamina, and so on down the line. Keep in mind that raw level becomes a little less important when you think about it this way. I know a lot of people who played the game, and I did for a long time, and it's like, I'm not taming anything that's I'm not taming anything that's lower than a 120. I only want 120s, and then 150s when they came out, and that is a little limiting. You're gonna miss a lot of opportunities if you do that, because I've tamed 120s that at the end of the day were total crap, just absolute trash, for a high level tame. And then I've tamed 112s or 130s or 135s if you're working on the new dino levels that ended up being really, really strong breeders. So you don't really know that until you down them and then tame them. You want to look at pretty high level tames, because then keep in mind you do get those extra bonus levels. If the higher they are, the more bonus levels they get. But don't limit yourself to only max level things if you're looking to breed a super dino, because you might stumble into a 116 or a 145 that really serves you well. So then what you do once you have all 6 of those is you work on breeding a single dino that inherits all the best traits of all of those 6 dinos. Okay? This can be difficult, because even when you get the right stat roll, sometimes you get the wrong gender roll. And this, but it's absolutely doable for anyone willing to put in the time. Ideally, you would want to produce 2 of these super dinos, 1 male and 1 female. The reason you want to do that is, of course, you can then make infinite babies with those super stats. Then you protect those parents, those breeder parents, with your life. Mutations add another dimension to this, but that's a topic I want to leave for another video. Again, let me know if you want to see that video, and I will show it to you. So that's how you make a super dino. Now for my critique of this system. The one variable in all of this that I personally find kind of disappointing is that after you go through the trouble of scouring the island for a decent level, and maybe even the gender you want, you trank it unconscious, you examine the stats, and 90% of the time you kill it for XP because of a very average or poor stat roll. You finally find one with a super stat. Then you spend your time and your resources to tame it, and it gets hardly any bonus levels in that particular stat and ends up being kind of garbage as a breeder. I can't tell you how many times I've done this on official, on hardcore official. I bred pteranodons incessantly. I can't tell you how many times I did this. That's a lot of RNG, and most people who tame high-level dinos aren't going to want to kill it after it's already tamed. Maybe some people do. I personally had a hard time because they're still really good. They're just not great breeders. Okay? Given the state of optimization of this game and the character of the game in general, all those extra tames incrementally make bases and dino pens impact server performance in a big way. That's why there are limits in the first place. The game could use less of an unnecessary zoo quality, in my opinion, and provide more options for strategic minimalism, I guess you could call it. I suppose that murdering some of your unnecessary tames would be one means, but personally, I would encourage the ARK devs to consider a general consistent bonus to stats between wild and tamed. So what I mean by that is you down something, you look at the stats. If it's really skewed in one direction, it kind of retains that distribution and then gets the bonus levels some other way. That could be an as even as possible distribution of stats across all the categories, or a straight percentage averaged across the bonus levels. ARK has structured its dino stat mechanics in such a way that the game is already kind of mathy, and within the mathy games genre, the sort of RNG combination of stats, different stuff genre, there always needs to be a balance between RNG and good strategy. RNG and like grinding and good strategy. that balance essentially determines how grindy the game is. And right now, I personally think that the balance is just slightly too RNG. You want to, I don't know, personally, I think you want to reward effort while maintaining a certain dynamism. The kind of randomness that produces the delight, really, that we feel when we find an amazing breeder dino. That's, you don't want to get rid of that. That's the random part, and I love it. But there could be a little less RNG in that. So that's my word on it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and come hang out with us sometime during our streams. We stream almost every day in the evenings, Eastern Standard Time. ARK, Overwatch, 7 Days to Die, bunch of different games. And if you're watching this later, we'll probably have moved on to other games even to try out. We stream in the evenings, Eastern Standard Time. I think I said turn on your YouTube notifications and follow us on Twitter so you know when we go live. I hope you enjoyed. Peace out, and I will see you on the next one.